Reborn into this world by Saber Chapter 4. Echoes of the Forgotten. Weeks had passed since Rimuru first began to speak, its once formless existence steadily shaping into something familiar yet entirely alien. The lab had transformed into a fortress of research and containment, where the watchful eyes of the military loomed large. What had started as a scientific inquiry into a liquid entity had morphed into a quest to uncover the lost identity of what they now knew as Rimuru. The name hadn't been assigned to the creature. It had emerged from within. During periods of dormancy, Rimuru muttered incoherent fragments. Distorted syllables that seemed like echoes of a forgotten past. One fateful night, after an exhaustive session, Shugal noticed a pattern in the creature's gibberish. Amid the jumble of letters and sounds, a single name began to emerge: Rimuru. At first, Shugal hesitated, but when he gently asked the creature, repeating the name, Rimuru reacted. Slowly, cautiously, it confirmed that this was its name, a reclamation of identity from the depths of a lost self. Rimuru's capabilities did not only come from its magic but also its unique physiology. After the chaotic events of the last experiment, Shugal discovered that Rimuru didn't require food, clothes, or any other necessities. When given clothes, instead of wearing them, it mimicked their form. Despite this, Shugal insisted that Rimuru wear the clothing, and in the end, Rimuru relented and donned them, sporting a simple yet elegant uniform reminiscent of a high noble imperial citizen. It was a blend of functionality and aesthetics, with deep navy and silver accents, symbolizing its new identity. This is kinda what Rimuru would look. Just follow the description I did. The only problem is that Rimuru has a short blue hair when he copies Paul, but I also forgot he can make things on his body longer since he's a slime, so I'ma go with that one. Today was supposed to be a regular day, yet an undercurrent of anticipation filled the air, thick as smoke and charged with the electricity of uncertainty. Shugal sat at his workstation, reviewing the data collected over the weeks. Rimuru had progressed rapidly. Its form now bore a closer resemblance to a human, though its features were subtly otherworldly, as if still trying to grasp the intricacies of human appearance. Its eyes, if they could be called eyes, glowed faintly, filled with curiosity as it regarded Shugal and the others. Behind him, Zetor and Rudersdorf stood, their expressions shifting from skepticism to cautious acceptance, though unease still lingered. Rimuru's power had grown exponentially, and though it had shown no signs of hostility since that first incident, the fear of losing control hung heavily in the air.
Shugal, Zetor began, his voice serious, this has gone beyond a simple experiment. Rimuru is becoming something far more aware. We need to decide where this ends.
Rudersdorf crossed his arms, his tone gruff. There are people upstairs who want this dealt with. They're afraid, and honestly, I can't blame them. What happens if it gets out of control again? Shugal's eyes remained focused on the data, but his mind raced. He knew the risks. Rimuru's abilities had soared, its magic power classified as a newly discovered class of S ranks. Its comprehension of language, memories, and even its form had sharpened. Yet the creature hadn't lashed out since that initial chaotic episode. It seemed cooperative, if not fully trusting. Shugal felt they were on the brink of something monumental. I know the dangers, he replied, not tearing his gaze from the notes. But Rimuru is trying to remember, trying to understand. I believe it's not a threat. At least not yet. We can't stop now. We're too close.
Zetor and Rudersdorf exchanged a glance, the tension palpable as they absorbed Shugal's conviction.
You have been given 2 months, Shugal, Zetor said firmly. They want to see the use of Rimuru for the Empire. They want reparations for all the resources you've consumed for this. If we don't have answers or results by then, if Rimuru becomes a liability, this will be out of our hands. Shugal nodded, a mix of euphoria and dread swirling within him. The countdown had begun, and there was no turning back. Inside the containment chamber, Rimuru sat at the center, its liquid form fully solidified into something almost human. As it regarded Shugal and the others, its glowing eyes pulsed with a mixture of curiosity and confusion. Shugal approached the glass, holding a recording device with trembling hands. Rimuru, he called gently, can you hear me? The creature turned, its form rippling before settling again. Yes. I hear you, it replied, its voice still fragmented but more stable than before. Shugal's heart raced. You remember your name now, don't you? Rimuru's form pulsed lightly. Yes.iremember.rimuru. The name sounded clearer now, more confident, resonating with the weight of reclamation. Zetor, leaning closer to Shugal, whispered, "It's not just speaking. It's remembering. You might be right about this thing." Shugal's gaze never wavered from Rimuru. "What do you remember, Rimuru? About who you were?" A long silence followed as Rimuru seemed to struggle, its form flickering. "I was lost.iwas. Not like this. It paused, grappling with something just beyond reach. But tknowwhatiwas. A pang of sympathy struck Shugal. The creature had been lost for so long, wandering in a state of oblivion, and now it was slowly piecing itself back together. "We'll help you," he whispered, determination filling his voice. "We'll help you find what you've lost." Rimuru's form settled, its glowing eyes locking onto Shugal's. "Thank you. As Shugal left the lab that evening, the weight of the situation bore down on him like never before. He had always been a mad scientist, indifferent to ethics, but the existence of Rimuru, its mysterious and tragic past, had changed him. Now, he walked a tightrope, balancing the potential discovery of a lifetime against the ever-present threat of catastrophe. As he stepped into the dimly lit hallway, he couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that clung to him. Each footfall echoed against the sterile walls, a reminder of the gravity of their endeavor. He passed by the observation windows, where armed guards stood sentinel, their expressions a mixture of vigilance and anxiety. The knowledge that something extraordinary and potentially dangerous was contained within those walls weighed heavily on all their shoulders. In his office, Shugal spread the datasheets across his desk, poring over the findings. Each experiment revealed new facets of Rimuru's abilities. Shape-shifting, elemental manipulation, even rudimentary telepathy. It was as if the creature was not only reclaiming its identity but also evolving beyond their understanding. As the hours dragged on, Shugal found himself lost in thought. Images of Rimuru flickered through his mind, its glowing eyes full of wonder and confusion. What kind of being had it once been? What had it experienced? The answers danced just out of reach, like shadows in the corners of his consciousness. Suddenly, there was a knock on his door. Startled, he looked up to find Zetor standing there, his face serious. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "What's going on?" Shugal asked, sensing the tension in the air. Zetor crossed his arms, leaning against the desk. "We can't keep Rimuru in isolation forever. We need to start integrating it into a more controlled environment." Shugal frowned. The implications of Zetor's words were clear. "You mean, training?" "Exactly," Zetor replied. "Combat testing. If Rimuru is going to be a part of the Empire's arsenal, it needs to be battle-ready. But we have to be cautious. We can't push it too hard."
"I understand the necessity," Shugal replied, his voice strained. "But Rimuru isn't just an experiment. It's learning. It's becoming something more."
Zetor's expression softened slightly. "I get it. But we can't let sentiment cloud our judgment. Rimuru is a weapon, and weapons need to be tested. It's our job to harness that power." With that, Shugal felt the weight of his own ambitions bear down on him. They were on the verge of something groundbreaking, yet the risk of losing Rimuru, of pushing it beyond its limits, loomed like a dark cloud over their research. Days turned into weeks, and the tests began in earnest. Rimuru was introduced to various controlled environments, each carefully designed to assess its abilities without overwhelming it. The results were staggering. With each session, Rimuru demonstrated a mastery of magic that both astonished and terrified its own observers. The combat testing chamber, a latest tech arena with reinforced barriers, became their battleground. Shugal watched from the observation deck, heart racing as Rimuru conjured dazzling displays of elemental magic. Fire, water, wind. Each spell was an extension of itself, weaving through the air with elegance and precision. "Remarkable," Rudersdorf remarked, his arms crossed as he scrutinized the screen displaying Rimuru's energy levels. The creature had quickly adapted to the environment, manipulating the elements with surprising ease. Zetor nodded, though his expression was still clouded with concern. "But we need to tread carefully. We can't underestimate what it could become if it were to lose control." As if on cue, Rimuru's form flickered, and it paused, sensing the tension in the room. Its glowing eyes turned toward the observation deck, locking onto Shugel's gaze. There was a moment of stillness, a silent connection between them that transcended words. Rimuru, Shugel called, feeling the weight of expectation settle on his shoulders. Are you ready for this next phase? Rimuru nodded, its form stabilizing. Yes.ICAN.IWILL.
In that moment, Shugel realized that they were no longer just experimenting on a creature. They were forging a partnership, two beings navigating a complex world filled with uncertainty and danger. As Rimuru unleashed its magic, Shugel felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could create something extraordinary together.
As they stood together in the chamber, the first seeds of a new beginning took root. Though the path ahead was uncertain, together they would navigate the complexities of Rimuru's memory, his identities, humanity itself, and the boundaries that connected them all. Next day, the shadows of the military hierarchy loomed large, and Shugel couldn't ignore the murmurs about potential funding cuts and resource allocation. The brass was anxious, and as tensions mounted with reports finding out that the Francois Republic stockpiling supplies, every moment of indecision felt like a step closer to catastrophe. Time was running out, and every test they conducted was scrutinized, a countdown echoing through the sterile hallways. And yet, with each passing day, Rimuru continued to evolve. It was adapting to the rigors of training, but each display of power reminded Shugel of the fine line they walked. It was a creature born of magic and mystery, a manifestation of lost potential, and every time Rimuru unleashed its abilities, Shugel felt a mixture of pride and fear. As Rimuru perfected its magic, Shugel found himself increasingly drawn into its world. Their conversations deepened, and the bond they formed transcended that of a mere experimenter and experiment. Rimuru began sharing its thoughts, musings that danced along the edges of memory, of feelings both foreign and familiar. Do you ever feel alone? Rimuru asked one day, its voice soft, tinged with an emotion that was almost human. Shugel paused, taken aback. Alone? I suppose I do sometimes. But we're working together, aren't we? Rimuru's form rippled slightly. It's not the same. I have no memories of where I came from. I can't grasp the past. Shugel felt a pang in his heart. Maybe that's okay for now. We can create new memories together. Rimuru tilted its head, contemplating the idea, new memories.
Yes, we can make our own history, starting today. As they delved deeper into their experiments, the atmosphere shifted. The air crackled with potential, but it also thrummed with a growing tension. Rumors began to circulate within the corridors of power, unsettling whispers about Rimuru's nature and the possibilities it represented.
Did you hear the latest gossip? One officer remarked, his voice low as he leaned against a wall. They say Rimuru is a weapon of the gods. Something beyond our comprehension. Another officer snorted in response. Don't be ridiculous. It's just a creature, albeit a powerful one. But a weapon? That's absurd.
The first officer shook his head, eyes narrowed. Absurd or not, it's what they're saying. And there are those who want to harness that power.
Back in the lab, Shugel remained oblivious to the swirling rumors as he focused on Rimuru's training. They had embarked on a new series of tests, each one more challenging than the last. Rimuru was pushed to its limits, facing combat scenarios designed to assess its magical abilities under duress. As they progressed, Rimuru began to show signs of not just strength but strategy. During one session, when confronted with a series of projected targets, Rimuru dodged and weaved with an agility that surprised everyone. It countered attacks with magical bursts that sent shockwaves through the air, leaving the observers in awe. Remarkable! Shugel exclaimed, scribbling notes furiously. Your timing is impeccable, Rimuru. Rimuru evolves, it replied, its form shimmering as it steadied itself. With every success, however, the unease within Shugel deepened. He was growing attached, and he could see the potential in Rimuru, but that same potential terrified him. If it ever lost control, if the power it wielded became too great, the consequences could be catastrophic.
As if sensing his thoughts, Rimuru spoke up. You're worried.
Shugel sighed, rubbing his temples. I am. I worry about the future, about how the Empire will use you. I don't want you to be seen as just a weapon. I am not just a weapon, Rimuru said, a hint of defiance in its voice. I am Rimuru. At that moment, Shugel realized how far they had come. Rimuru was no longer merely a project. It was a partner, a being with its own thoughts and feelings. The idea that Rimuru could forge its own destiny, that it might not be confined to the role of a weapon, gave Shugal hope. Little did they know, however, that the world outside held challenges and dangers they could never have anticipated. The echoes of the forgotten past would soon intertwine with their future, and the choices they made would reverberate far beyond the confines of the lab. In this moment of hope, they were unaware of the shadows gathering on the horizon. Forces that sought to control or eliminate Rimuru before it could truly claim its identity. A dark cloud, watching and waiting for the right moment to strike.
The clock was ticking, and with each passing moment, the stakes were rising, leading them down a path filled with uncertainty and discovery. But for now, as Rimuru glowed with the potential of a new tomorrow, Shugal knew one thing for certain. This journey was just beginning, and together, they would face whatever came next.
As Rimuru continued to grow, Shugal couldn't shake the feeling that they were merely pawns in a larger game. A game where the stakes were higher than they could ever comprehend. And as they delved deeper into their research, the question hung in the air. What would be the cost of uncovering the truth behind Rimuru's identity? The conversations became less frequent, the atmosphere around Rimuru thickening with apprehension as the higher-ups pushed for more aggressive testing. Shugal found himself caught between his growing attachment to Rimuru and the military's relentless pursuit of results. Few days later, one afternoon, after another taxing training session, Shugal watched as Rimuru collapsed in exhaustion. Its form shimmered faintly before stabilizing, though the signs of liquefaction showed how much strain it had endured. Rimuru's ability to control magic had grown impressively over the past weeks, yet it was clear that the control lacked refinement. More and more, the creature had to pour excessive amounts of magic into even basic spells, overexerting itself in the process. So pretty much one of the reasons I think why Rimuru should be in this state than the legacy version is pretty much allows development over a deus ex machina type of way. Rimuru, Shugal called softly, stepping closer to the containment area. Are you all right? Rimuru's glowing eyes were dimmed, flickering as it tried to regain its composure. I'm tired, but I'll keep going.
Shugal shook his head, concern etched deeply on his face. No, you've done enough for today. Pushing yourself this hard isn't sustainable.
Rimuru gazed up at him, its shimmering form pulsing slightly. But I feel stronger, I want to understand more. And you will, Shugal reassured, though he couldn't shake the growing concern in his chest. But understanding takes time. You need to rest. If you keep overexerting yourself, the consequences could be severe. Rimuru was silent, its form rippling with uncertainty. Hurt. You said I could hurt myself. Yes, Shugal said gently, his eyes softening. Your magic is powerful, but without proper control, it requires too much of you. You need to refine it. Rimuru's gaze was questioning. Refine? Shugal hesitated, realizing that it wasn't just a matter of practice anymore. Rimuru needed help, more than just words or encouragement. Its raw magical talent was undeniable, but without a way to channel that power efficiently, it would continue to suffer. Shugal had seen it before. Mages burning themselves out because they lacked the precision to manage their spells. An idea began to form in his mind. Rimuru, I think it's time we take another approach. Rimuru tilted its head, the faint glow in its eyes flickering with curiosity. Another approach? Shugal nodded slowly, the weight of his decision settling in. I've been thinking. You're controlling magic, but it's taking too much from you. What if we could design something that helps you channel your magic more effectively? Something that lets you focus on precision, rather than just raw power.
What do you mean? Rimuru asked, its voice laced with curiosity.
An operation orb, Shugal explained. Imperial mages, but not only us but other mages from other countries also use them to stabilize and enhance their magic. It's a device that helps focus energy, reduce the strain on the caster. If we create one specifically for you, it can help you manage your magic better, so you won't need to push yourself to the limit every time. Rimuru's form rippled, contemplating the concept. An operation orb, like the mages? Yes, but one designed just for you, Shugal replied, feeling the idea solidify in his mind. You're different from any mage I've ever worked with, but that just means we need to tailor the solution to your unique abilities. For the first time in weeks, Shugal felt a glimmer of hope. He had been so focused on training Rimuru that he had overlooked one of the most fundamental tools at a mage's disposal. With an operation orb, Rimuru can control its magic with greater precision, reducing the risks of overexertion or accidental overload. I will do this for you, Shugal said firmly. It will take time to design, but once it's ready, I believe it will make a huge difference. Rimuru's eyes gleamed faintly, its form stabilizing slightly as the idea of a solution settled in. If it helps, I want to try. Shugal smiled, though the weight of their situation remained heavy on his shoulders. Zetor and Rudersdorf have been applying more pressure lately, demanding faster results. But now, with the prospect of an operation orb for Rimuru, Shugal sees a way forward, one that might protect both Rimuru's well-being and the military's expectations. As the following days passed, Shugal poured himself into the design of a new operation orb, collaborating with his team and using everything he had learned about Rimuru's unique physiology and magic. He worked late into the night, his office littered with sketches, notes, and failed prototypes. Rimuru continued to train, though Shugal took extra care to limit the intensity of each session. Every time Rimuru showed signs of overexertion, Shugal pulled back, reminding himself that soon, the orb would ease the burden. Yet, even as progress was made, there was a constant tension in the air, the unspoken fear that time was running out. The military brass grew increasingly impatient. Zetor and Rudersdorf visited more often, their demands for results growing sharper by the day. But Shugal remains firm, protecting Rimuru from the worst of the pressure while working relentlessly on the orb's creation. Finally, after weeks of development, the prototype was ready. The next morning, Shugal stood before Rimuru with the newly crafted operation orb in hand. It was a sleek, crystalline device, designed with intricate runes and enchantments specifically attuned to Rimuru's magical signature. Rimuru, Shugal said, holding the orb out, this is for you. Rimuru's eyes gleamed with curiosity as it reached out toward the orb, its shimmering form rippling as it made contact with the device. For a brief moment, the orb hummed with energy, glowing faintly in sync with Rimuru's form. Try it, Shugal urged. See how it feels. Rimuru closed its eyes, focusing. Slowly, it cast a spell, one it had struggled with for weeks, but this time, the magic flowed smoothly, without the usual strain. The orb glowed softly, amplifying and stabilizing Rimuru's power. I feel in control, Rimuru said, its voice filled with awe. Shugal exhaled a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Good. This is just the beginning. With this, you'll be able to train more efficiently. You won't need to overexert yourself anymore. For the first time in what felt like forever, Shugal allowed himself a moment of pride. The operation orb had worked. Rimuru was no longer teetering on the edge of collapse, and they had found a way to harness its power without sacrificing its well-being. But as Shugal watched Rimuru practice with its new tool, the looming shadow of the military's demands lingered at the back of his mind. They had bought themselves some time, but the real challenges were still ahead.